With Tarkir Dragonstorm about to release, let's go over why this Temur Precon should be the one you pick up at your local game store. And now out of the box, you're going to have the face commander, Eshki Temur Shroor, and Ureni of the Unwritten as the backup commander. Eshki is a 3-mana 2/2 that whenever you cast a creature spell, you get to put a +1/+1 counter onto her, and then if that creature's power is 4 or greater, you get to draw a card, and if that spell's power is 6 or greater, Eshki deals damage equal to her power to each opponent. And now while I think Eshki is a great commander, I think that this Precon doesn't really feel suited for her to be in the command zone. As we'll get into later, with this deck list there are only 6 creatures in the Precon that would trigger Eshki's final ability, burning everyone at the table. So I think that out of the box, Ureni is the choice to be in the command zone. Ureni is a 7-mana 7/7 that off of entering and off of attacking will let you look at the top 8 cards of your library and put a dragon from among them directly onto the battlefield. And now while I think Eshki could be a great commander in her own right, Ureni's ability is just too much fun to not have access to in the command zone if you're going to pick up this Precon. And now Ureni's playstyle is fairly straightforward. Get him out as fast as possible and flood the board with dragons. With a 7-mana casting cost for our commander, our first goal is going to be ramping early, trying to get Ureni out by turn 5, maybe even turn 4 if we get a lucky Soul Ring or ramp in our opening hand. And now if we're not able to speed out Ureni, other things that we can do before casting it would be putting something onto the board that would give our creatures haste, which would allow us, the turn that we cast Ureni, to get their trigger twice, once from entering and once from attacking, all in the same turn. And now once Ureni is out and we've done the thing, you kind of just become the problem player, just putting big stompy flyers onto the battlefield that are great for dealing damage, but also for blocking incoming threats. One thing that this Precon is definitely lacking is solid protection spells. Once you do the thing with Ureni, your board becomes a quick target for removal and for board wipes. And while the deck does bounce back really quickly, it could use some pieces of counter magic or just some protection to keep us in a winning board state. But now, before we get into our upgrades, let's go over the deck's value, starting with the great reprints that we're going to find in this Precon. Dragon Tempest and Temur Ascendancy are both fantastic reprints that I am so glad are put into this Precon. Both are worth around $10, and they do exactly what our deck wants to do. First and foremost, they both give our dragons and most importantly our commander haste, but also give us some decent card draw and burn effects. And now sticking with good enchantment reprints, Elemental Bond is going to be around an $8 card put into this Precon that's going to let us draw a card whenever a creature with power 3 or greater enters the battlefield. And now another fantastic reprint is going to be Selvala Stampede. This 4 and 2 green sorcery, starting with us, we're going to get to choose between wild or free. Then we're going to reveal cards from the top of our library until we reveal a creature card for each wild vote. We then put those cards onto the battlefield for free and then shuffle the rest into our library. Then we get to put a permanent card from our hand directly onto the battlefield for each free vote. This card basically boils down to us putting 4 permanents, which are mostly going to be creatures, onto the battlefield for free. And in a high cost dragon deck, that is just unbelievable value for 6 mana. Seeing that this Precon just has great enchantments and other things already that help us draw cards and give our creatures haste is fantastic for whenever we go to look at upgrades. It means that we don't have to focus on doing these minute things to make the deck run smoothly, like add extra card draw, and we can just focus on putting in some great dragons. And now speaking of dragons, let's go over the great reprints that they threw in here that are dragon spells. And starting off first is an absolute banger of a dragon in Hellkite Courser. This 6-mana 6/5 off entering puts our commander directly from the command zone onto the battlefield and gives it haste. The only small downside being we have to return it to our command zone at the beginning of the next end step. This is an absolute MVP with Ureni in the command zone. What we're hopefully going to be doing, and in the worst case scenario with no ramp, is cast Hellkite Courser on turn 6, put Ureni onto the battlefield, do his trigger, and then swing, do Ureni's trigger again, and then put him back in the command zone. The following turn, we put Ureni back onto the battlefield and get another dragon off of his trigger. Hellkite Courser is such a great card on its own, and it is fantastic in this Precon. From Hellkite Courser, the value of the reprinted dragons does go down by a significant amount, but the quality does not. Dragons like Atarka World Renderer and Dragonlord Atarka, Atushi the Blazing Sky, and Lathis Dragon Queen. And now while at or below $5 outside of Atsushi, these dragons just have such great effects for this deck, and I'm really glad that they were thrown in as reprints. And for some great non-dragon reprints, Nagi Draco Zealot and Sarkhan Soul of Flame are also just some amazing cards that were put into this deck. They both give our dragon spells a cost reduction of 1, which is fantastic, and for some late game value, they can turn into dragons that help us swing in for some great damage. And now that we've gone over the reprints, let's go into some of the new cards thrown in that are original to this Precon, starting with Broodcaller Scourge. This is a 7 mana 5/7 dragon that with flying, whenever one or more dragons we control deal combat damage to a player, you may put a permanent card with mana value less than or equal to that damage from your hand onto the battlefield. Broodcaller is just such a great card that pairs well with Urani. Even if we put Broodcaller in off of Urani's ability and don't have a haste enabler, we can still get value off of its ability since it triggers with other dragons, not just itself hitting players. And now another great original card from this Precon is Deceptive Frostkite. Being a 2 blue 1/1 flyer, we may have this creature enter as a copy of another creature we control with power 4 or greater, except it's a dragon in addition to its other types and has flying. And now while most of the time in this Precon we are going to be copying dragons already, and this doesn't get around the legendary rule, this is still a very valuable card to have if we want to copy one of our non-legendary dragons late in the game. The next OG card is going to be Hammerhead Tyrant. 4 and 2 blue, a 6/6 flyer. Whenever we cast a spell, we can return up to one target non-land permanent a opponent controls with mana value less than or equal to that spell's mana value to its owner's hand. This means that if we had Hammerhead on the battlefield whenever we casted our commander Urani, we could bounce anything mana value 7 or less that our opponents have on their board back to their hand. Us being able to have just a very reliable bounce engine on a 6/6 flyer is just a super great thing to have in this deck. Thundermane Dragon is another unique dragon to this Precon. Being 3 in a red, a 4/4 flyer, we may look at the top card of our library at any time, and we may cast creature spells with power 4 or greater from the top of our library. If we do so, that creature gains haste until the end of turn. Having another way to flood the board with dragons, being able to look at the top card of our library is just a fantastic thing to have on a 4 mana 4/4. And now for the last original dragon that is going to be in this Precon I want to talk about is Parpet Thrasher. This is a 2 mana 2 red 4/3 flyer that whenever one or more dragons we control deal combat damage to a opponent, we choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn. We can either destroy target artifact that a opponent controls, Parpet Thrasher deals 4 damage to each other opponent, or we can exile the top card of our library and we may play it this turn. Parpet Thrasher is basically a 4 mana modal spell on a 4/3 flying body, where we're more than likely going to be able to do its effect multiple times, and more likely than not get 2 or all of its triggers within the same turn. Having a reliable way to take out an artifact, deal some burn damage, or just get some impulse draw is a fantastic thing to have on one of our dragons that we are hopefully able to just put in off of our commander's ability. And now starting off our list of original spells that are not dragons from this Precons, let's start with Will of the Temur. This is a 5 and a blue sorcery where we can choose one, or if we control our commander as we cast a spell we can choose both. We either create a token that's a copy of target permanent, except it's a 4/4 dragon creature with flying in addition to its other types, or target player draws cards equal to the greatest mana value among permanents you control. Both of these options are extremely good in our deck. Being able to just create a token that's a copy of something if we're facing a high-powered deck like a Rhystic Study or Smothering Tithe can be extremely powerful, also putting it on a 4/4 dragon creature that could also trigger some of our other spells, letting us draw cards and maybe do some burn damage. The final option of letting us draw cards means that if our commander is on the battlefield, we could choose ourselves to draw 7 cards, refilling our hand and letting us have some more options to cast some spells. And now another good card that is original to this Precon is Become the Avalanche. This 4 and 2 green sorcery, this lets us draw a card for each creature that we control with power 4 or greater, and then creatures we control get +X/+X until the end of turn, where X is the number of cards in our hand. Being that most of our creatures in this deck are just at power 4 or greater already, this means that usually we're going to get a draw 3 to 4 effect, and then give our dragons +6/+6 or something around there until the end of turn, basically being a very nice overrun effect. And now for the last things I want to hit on with the original cards is going to be the Dragonstorm cycle of enchantments. This deck comes with the red and the green one, with Breaching Dragonstorm and Encroaching Dragonstorm. These enchantments have the unique ability that whenever a dragon we control enters, we get to return this enchantment to our hand. For something like Encroaching Dragonstorm that lets us put 2 basic lands onto the battlefield tapped and then shuffle, this is a great way to get repeatable ramp every time a dragon enters, making sure we can keep ramping and ramping to cast our dragon spells. And now finally, let's move into the upgrades I would recommend for this deck. Starting with the cards in the set, let's just get the obvious choices out of the way, being Stormscale Scion and Dracogenesis. Stormscale being a great finisher, giving us a fantastic Dragon Anthem effect that has the Storm mechanic on it is something that we just can't ignore trying to throw into this deck. And then of course Dracogenesis being Rooftop Storm for dragons, but also having the upside of letting us cast Ureni for free from the command zone is something that we can't just pass up on recommending for this deck. And now that we've gone over the obvious choices for men's set, let's go over some of the lesser known and also importantly, lesser costing cards from inside Tarkir Dragonstorm. And now the first one I want to go over is Dragonologist. Being 2 in a blue, a 1/3 human wizard, whenever it enters, we get to look at the top 6 cards of our library, and then we may reveal an instant sorcery or dragon card from among them and put it into our hand, putting the rest on the bottom of our library in any order, also having the text that untapped dragons we control have hexproof. Dragonologist has an ability very similar to our commander Urenis, but instead of putting dragons directly onto the battlefield, we get more options to choose from and they go into our hand. This not only lets us dig for a dragon spell, but also gives us the options to look for a ramp or a removal spell if we needed one in hand. Dragonologist also gives our untapped dragons hexproof, which is some great protection that this deck really needs. And now a fantastic dragon from inset is going to be the other Ureni the Song Unending. For 1 more mana than our Precon version of Ureni, it's going to be a 10/10 flying protection from white and black spirit dragon. And whenever it enters, it's going to deal X damage divided as we choose among any number of target creatures and our planeswalkers that our opponents control, where X is the number of lands we control. This means that off entering, we can either get basically a mini board wipe where we take out a bunch of small creatures, or we can take out a massive threat that one of our opponents control. This is a versatile 10/10 flyer that just has to be mentioned and recommended as an upgrade for this deck. Moving on to another amazing dragon from this set is going to be Goldlust Triad. This dragon came out in the Mardu Precon and is 4 in a red for a 4/3 dragon with flying, myriad, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, create a treasure token. This means that whenever we swing with it, we're going to get 2 copies that are swinging at both of our opponents, and if all 3 hit, we're going to get 3 treasure tokens. This is a fantastic dragon that also turns on a lot of our other enchantments, such as Elemental Bond and Temur Ascendancy. For whenever the myriad copies enter, we are still going to draw a card off of them entering off of both Elemental Bond and Temur Ascendancy, being a very awesome dragon that I have to recommend for upgrading this deck. And now another great card from inset is going to be the blue Dragonstorm spell, Roiling Dragonstorm. This enchantment is 1 in a blue, and whenever it enters, we get to draw 2 cards and then discard a card, and then of course whenever a dragon enters, we get to return it to our hand. Now I really love this Dragonstorm effect because it basically just becomes a repeatable draw engine for us. With how many dragons we're going to be putting in off of Ureni, this is basically going to let us draw 2 cards multiple times in a turn in the late game. And now finally from the set for upgrades, a lot of the Omen dragon cards can be really valuable in this deck. And now while the base Precon does come with a few in Stormshriek Feral and Whirlwing Stormbrood, the main set has some fantastic ones. Bloomvine Regent is a fantastic card that I would highly recommend for this deck if you ended up pulling or getting your hands on one. Now, how the Omen card works is that you can cast them for their Omen cost and the effect in the bottom left of the card. Whenever you do, you then shuffle this card back into your library after the effect goes off, allowing you the chance to draw it again later. And now this gives a card like Bloomvine Regent great value early on in the game as a ramp spell, but also if we do end up drawing into it in the late game, it's a very nice dragon that can help us gain some life and just have a big flying body on board. And now the last thing I want to do with this video is just going over some generic upgrades from any set in Magic. Now, we're going to start with the obvious ones just to get them out of the way. Stable dragons like Terror of the Peaks, Miram, Dragonhawk, these are all great cards that do not need an explanation for why I'm recommending them. Copying our dragons, being able to deal damage off of our dragons entering, these are all great effects that would just go greatly in this deck to boost the power. If you have these cards on hand or just want this deck to pack more of a punch, these are obvious cards to throw in. And now to look at the upgrades that are going to really help fine-tune this deck. Like I said earlier, this deck's primary goal early on is to ramp into Ureni. And now while the Precon does come with a great ramp package, it has room for a lot of upgrades. 3 Visits in Nature's Lore can be thrown in as some staple ramp options, and Skyshroud Claim is an amazing early game addition to speed us into Ureni. Now, while I would stay away from creature-based ramps since this deck does seem to force a lot of board wipes and removal, Fanatic of Ronus and Bloom Tender are amazing to shoot us forward mana-wise. Both of these cards at their peak are going to be able to tap for more mana than we pay into, which is going to be fantastic, which along the same lines, just throw in Savala Heart of the Wilds if you're also looking for a very nice thing to boost us forward mana-wise. Another great ramp option for us is going to be Clouth Unrivaled Ancient. This 5 in Gruul Colors legendary dragon is a 4/4 flying haster that whenever it attacks, we add X mana in any combination of colors where X is the total power of attacking creatures, and we can spend this mana only to cast spells, and until the end of turn, we do not lose mana as steps and phases end. This means that with a full board of dragons, we'll be able to just cast stuff from our hand like nobody's business. Along the same lines of Clouth is going to be Savage Ventmaul and Old Gnawbone. Savage Ventmaul giving us 3 red and 3 green whenever we swing with it, and Old Gnawbone giving us treasures equal to the amount of combat damage we do. Now another fantastic card that I'd love to throw into this deck is Smuggler's Surprise. What we really care about is that for a green to cast it, and then the 1 on its bottom ability, creatures we control with power 4 or greater gain hexproof and indestructible until the end of turn. This means that for just at minimum 2 mana, all of our powerful dragons gain hexproof and indestructible until the end of turn, giving us a lot of protection that this deck really needs. And now this Temur Precon from Tarkir has everything that a dragon player wants: giant dragons and powerful ways to get them onto the board quickly. And after playing and upgrading this deck for myself, I can say that it's definitely one of my favorite decks when I just get the urge to swing in for a whole lot of damage. And now while I really do like Eshki as a card, I just don't think it's the commander for this Precon out of the box. Ureni just has such a powerful and fun ability, I think you're doing a disservice to yourself not putting it in the command zone. Now I really hope that you enjoyed this video being the first of our Tarkir Precon reviews. Coming out in a few days, we're going to be going over the Mardu one, so stay tuned. If you liked the video, be sure to like and subscribe, and until next time, see ya.